Behind the rental car counter at Osaka's Kansai International Airport, the young Japanese employee asks, "Are you attending the 8 hours?" After replying that I am and noting that I have no clothing that designates me as being involved in motorcycles, he states, "I also will go to the 40th anniversary but only for the race on Sunday." He then asks, "Which brand do you support?" When I tell him that I am a journalist, and thus am not supporting anybody, he replies, "Ah, I see, I'm for Suzuki. Though I think this year Yamaha is going to win again." This short and apparently innocuous conversation demonstrated how unique the Suzuka 8 hours race is. It's hopefully a sign that the event is beginning to regain its prominence among the Japanese public, especially the younger generation who have abandoned it in the last decade or so, searching for emotions in other entertainment options. The build-up to the Suzuka 8 hours race begins with practice sessions on Wednesday and Thursday, followed by provisional qualifying on Friday. Saturday is reserved for the Suzuka 4 hours race, limited to 600cc supersport machines, and the top 10 trial, where each rider is allowed a single flying lap. Suzuka is where the Superpole qualifying concept originated, with the team's 2 quickest riders' laps averaged to determine the starting position of the top 10 qualifying teams. It's that team aspect that permeates everything about the Suzuka 8 hours race. The rental car employee asked me about which brand I supported, and there was no mention at all of any star rider. The brand loyalty at Suzuka is another difference to other races. At motop races, the fans are often organized by which riders they support: yellow for Valentino Rossi, red for Marc Marquez, black for Jorge Lorenzo, but the grandstands at Suzuka are divided among the colors that represent the 4 Japanese brands: red for Honda, blue for Yamaha, green obviously for Kawasaki followers, and a different blue for Suzuki fans. For the factories, at the least the Big 4 Japanese manufacturers, the 8 hours is the most important event of the year. Yes, motop is the big challenge in the championship that demands more resources, but the Suzuka 8 hours is special. It's the race that commands respect among the factories. The race takes place the last weekend of July, which is traditionally the warmest time of the year in Japan. The temperature is usually a bit over 30 degrees Celsius, 86 degrees Fahrenheit, but the humidity is terrible, nearly unbearable. Conditions are bad enough that the race takes a physical toll on the riders that lasts for weeks afterward. The heat is brutal enough that all the teams have inflatable pools behind their pit boxes that the riders throw themselves into after they get on the bike. Some of the factory teams actually employed IV fluid replenishment in the late 90s, early 2000s, but the practice was eventually banned. The race is held at the Suzuka circuit, a track considered the mother of all circuits due to its difficulty. It's owned by Honda and is housed within an amusement park also owned by the same company. Needless to say, this race is extremely important to Honda, and you can imagine what it means for the other Japanese manufacturers to beat Honda in its own backyard. This year's Suzuka 8 hours had a special flavor. It marked the race's 40th anniversary, and having lost the last 2 years to Yamaha, for Honda it was a matter of honor to win this year, especially after the order given by Honda Motor Company President Takahiro Hachigo to his employees: the 40th anniversary of the Suzuka 8 hours has to be won. Knowing that its old CBR was too outdated to compete with Yamaha's R1, Honda understood that the only way to win was significantly update the bike, and that's what it did for this year's race. If you think the launch of the new CBR 1000RR was just a coincidence with Suzuka's 40th anniversary year, think again. The truth is the new CBR 1000RR was created to enable Honda to take back what Yamaha had stolen from it in the past 2 years, the glory of winning at Suzuka. Honda wasn't officially involved in the race, but a look in the pit boxes of the Musashi RT Hark Pro and FCC TSR teams showed the reality. Both were strongly supported by HRC. Shinichi Kokubu, HRC General Manager of Technical Development Division, and Kazuhiko Yamano, former Repsol Honda team manager, spent the weekend in the Musashi RT Hark Pro garage, and the FCC TSR garage was crowded with HRC staff. Some of them used to work for Repsol Honda, others worked for Team Gresini. It was pretty obvious HRC had sent a good amount of resources to Suzuka. And yet, despite the president's message and its new machine, Honda engineers knew that a miracle would be needed to win the race. Although they had been preparing the bike for almost 9 months, it wasn't ready to beat Yamaha's R1. This confirms what former HRC Vice President Shuhei Nakamoto told us in April during the GP of the Americas held in Austin. Our bike is 18 kilograms lighter than the one used last year, but we aren't competitive enough yet in other areas. Trying to increase its odds by numbers, Honda lined up teams with every possible tire combination, an amazing situation that is now impossible to see anywhere else in the world. The Musashi RT Hark Pro and FCC TSR teams used 17-inch Bridgestones, while the Moriwaki Moto Racing team preferred 17-inch Pirellis. The Honda Dream Racing team was on the 16.5-inch Bridgestones, and the Autoluru Kahara Racing team lined up with 17-inch Dunlops. 3 different tire makers and 2 different tire diameters. Suzuki had also a new bike for the 40th anniversary, but like Honda, the new generation GSX-R 1000R arrived at the race without being ready. In fact, only 2 teams, Yoshimura and Kajiyama, out of 9 Suzuki squads in the race used the 2017 GSX-R. The rest raced on the older 2016 version. Electronics were apparently their biggest handicap because the Suzuka 8 Hours does not restrict electronics. Honda and Yamaha could use the hyper-sophisticated proprietary electronics that are no longer legal in MotoGP. Before the advent of the Spec EQ, this was an area where Suzuki was a step behind. Yamaha and Kawasaki approached the 8 Hours in a more conservative way. Both factories lined up their 2016 bikes with the regular updates. Yamaha had won with its R1 the last 2 years, while Kawasaki's Team Green had been the only bike to finish in the same lap as the winners. Both made the saying, "A known devil is better than an unknown angel," its policy for this year's event. This included the use of Bridgestone's old generation 16.5-inch tires, as both teams had a lot of data with them from the previous years. An example how much the Japanese factories concentrate on the Suzuka 8 Hours is Yamaha and Kawasaki's private test at Sepang in January, when the teams traveled there to test the new 17-inch Bridgestone tires in similar conditions they would face in Suzuka in July. But the weather didn't cooperate, and the long-run tests couldn't be completed. So the decision was taken to stick on the 16.5-inch tires. To describe the 8 Hours race in detail would probably take up all the pages of this magazine. So many things happen, so many anecdotes, details. But in the end, what matters is the final result, and in this aspect there were clearly 2 winners and 2 losers in the 40th anniversary Suzuka 8 Hours race. When I met Kuchi Tsuji, the man responsible for all of Yamaha's racing activities, in the paddock after the race, the usually distant Japanese engineer was surprisingly exultant. "We have won everything: the 8 Hours, the Endurance World Championship, and the 4 Hours race with an Indonesian team. Yes, the most important event of the year for the Japanese Big Four finished with a full bingo for Yamaha." Yamaha's main factory racing team with Katsuyuki Nakasuga, Alex Lowe's, and Michael van der Mark started from the pole position and lapped fast, consistent, and didn't make any mistakes. The perfect script for a long-distance race. For Nakasuga, it was his 3rd win in a row, setting a new record for a Japanese rider at Suzuka. Kawasaki was again second when the checkered flag fell. At 7:30 p.m. in Suzuka, Team Green also finished second in 2016. The Kawasaki squad did its job well. They were never really in the spotlight, but with consistency and a good pace, they took advantage of their well-planned strategy and the errors of the others. Having won only once in 40 years of the 8 Hours, 93 with WSBK champions Scott Russell and Aaron Slight, it looks like it's time for Kawasaki to go for the victory. Its strong and all-winning WSBK pair of Jonathan Rea and Tom Sykes could be a very strong base to build up a challenging team. If Yamaha and Kawasaki finished this year's 8 Hours with their job done, Honda and Suzuki were the opposite side of the coin. Probably the most disappointed was Team Yoshimura. It was surely frustrating for the team when Katsuyuki Tsuda crashed in the second lap of the race. Yoshimura Suzuki's 1 year of work was thrown away less than 5 minutes after the start. This after Tsuda had managed on Saturday to put the Yoshimura Suzuki in second spot on the grid, meaning Yoshimura's expectations for the race were reasonably high. "We have left Honda for the end of our story, as it was the big loser of its own race. The orders from the boss were not only to be very competitive but also to win, trying not to lose sight of the Yamaha team." The Musashi RT Hark Pro riders made errors, which cost them second position in the later stages of the race. A big disappointment for Honda, or maybe not that much, because as we said before, back in April it seemed they knew it was going to be an uphill battle to win at Suzuka.